Batman is one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. In recent years especially, Batman has become one of the most recognisable and beloved franchises. The character has been around since 1939, and so you know a lot of things have happened since then. Some of them are quite dark. And so yeah, here is the Batman Iceberg. I consider myself a casual fan of Batman, so if I get anything wrong here, please let me know down in the comments. I don't know everything. Also, just before we get into this video, if you like it, please subscribe. We're building this channel together from the ground up, and it'd be great for you to come along for the ride. Anyways, without further ado, here is the Batman Iceberg. Here we go. First one up, we have the Dark Knight trilogy. It was a trilogy made by Christopher Nolan back in the 2000s and early 2010s, beginning with Batman Begins in 2005 and wrapping up with The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. This is one of the most famous film trilogies of all time. It needs no introduction. We're at the top of the iceberg, so let's move on. Batman the Animated Series might be one of the most beloved Batman incarnations. I've never met anyone that's watched this show and dislikes it. It has a very cult fan base. I see a lot of clips on YouTube and stuff, and it's just hilarious. It came out in 1992 and ended in 1995, and it included a voice cast that comprised of both Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, among others. I've seen a little bit of it, and I have quite enjoyed it, but again, we're still early on. Basically, everyone's going to know what this is, so let's go deeper. The DCEU. I mean, I've spoken about this a little bit on my Defense of Grandpa Joe video. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. If you're one of like the 3 people on this planet that doesn't know what the DCEU is, basically DC saw that Marvel was making bank on the MCU and made a cinematic universe of their own. Just happened to be a shoddier version of it. Their movies are really hit and miss, and to be honest, the best ones never actually have anything to do with the rest of the cast. Shazam is probably my favourite, I would say, and that one, like, you know, there's no crossover there, so yeah. Batman never kills. Until he does. Traditionally, no, and I have very strong opinions on this. I've always thought that by not killing the Joker, Batman selfishly washes his hands from directly killing one person, but instead indirectly kills dozens of others. And Batman always wonders how Joker could break out of Arkham Asylum and kill people. It's like, just snap one neck and you will save hundreds of lives. I'm not one for capital punishment usually, but like, this dude is literally a supervillain. And then in the DCU, he does kill because Zack Snyder hasn't done his research, I guess. Yeah. That credit card is used in Batman and Robin to buy Poison Ivy to take her out on a date. Batman gets scammed for like 7 million or something. Why he has a Bat credit card, I don't know. And Batman's always had wacky gadgets, but this one might just take the cake. Heath Ledger's death. Yeah, I saved speaking about this one at the end of the Dark Knight entry, but during the film, Heath Ledger tragically committed suicide. As a method actor, many believe that he engrossed himself too much into the role and it drove him to madness. He never lived to see himself win Best Supporting Actor. He never lived to see his performance, and it's gone down as one of the great movie performances. I spoke a bit about it in my Unus Annus video, but for as truly tragic the death was, the film etched Ledger into history, and Ledger as Joker will go down as one of the greatest film performances of all time. But even so, at what cost? Okay, The Killing Joke. We're going to go into spoiler territory here, so if you don't want to know what happens, I'd probably say click off this video and watch The Killing Joke, because there's going to be a few entries about it. So yeah. Anyway, that's your spoiler warning. I'm going to get onto it now. The Killing Joke is a Batman graphic novel released in 1998, set around one of the darkest Batman stories, involving Joker paralysing Barbara Gordon, torturing her dad Jim Gordon, a possible backstory to the Joker, and probably the most famous ending to a Batman comic of all time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Killing Joke is known for being especially messed up, and it's also known for being one of the highest rated Batman comics of all time, maybe the most famous. So if you like Batman and you haven't read the comic, you might want to do just that. The Long Halloween is another famous Batman story, this one featuring gang warfare, the Holiday Killer, an interpretation of Two-Face's origins, and although again I could hypothetically go into like an 8-minute explanation, I don't really think so many people would like that. So if you're interested in either The Killing Joke or The Long Halloween, I'm just going to link some videos in the description, and you can go over and watch both of their stories. Okay, anyway, the ending of The Killing Joke itself had a lot of controversy as it was left open. Batman is inches away from killing the Joker. He reached for his neck. Joker's laughing, and then the next frames are that of silence. The question is, did he kill the Joker? It's open to interpretation. Some people think that Joker tells the killing joke, it's in the name. Others think that Batman wouldn't betray his moral code. Throughout the comics, there's a theme of both Batman and Joker being undeniably intertwined, linked through their destiny, with their fates being synonymous with each other. One likely will kill the other. They speak about it in the comic. So there really is no wrong answer, so let me know down in the comments, what do you think? Do you think Batman killed the Joker? The Fans Killed Robin. This is one that I actually didn't have to do too much research with because my friend who's really big into Batman told me about this a few times. Basically, after Dick Grayson became Red Hood, DC Comics made Jason Todd into the next Robin. The problem was that he had the exact same backstory as Grayson. The same look, essentially the same backstory, he was the same character. However, many fans thought of him as more whingy, ungrateful, and generally a lot of them hated him. He was so unpopular, in fact, that the editor Dennis Benny O'Neill decided to do a referendum of sorts and put his face up to the fans, who needed to call in to decide if Jason Todd should live or die. In total, 10,614 fans voted, with 5,271 voting survive, and 5,343 voting kill. Therefore, they made Joker kill him, despite there only being 72 votes in it. We now know, however, that some fans voted many times. One fan allegedly voted over 100 times to kill, and so if each person got one vote, the outcome may have been different, Jason Todd might have lived, and the Batman comics might have changed forever. Bill Finger. Okay, as I've said, I don't know too much about Batman, I'm sure, compared to some people watching this. I've got my information off a Myth Stories video about how Bob Kane stole Batman. It's a very good video, very well made, so I'm going to link it in the description. Bob Kane, the creator of Batman, was a fucking asshole. An abbreviated story is that Bob Kane and Bill Finger met at a party in the 1930s and bonded over their love of comics. After Superman became popular, Kane asked Finger to go over some of his ideas for the Batman character. So yes, the original idea of Batman came from Kane, right? Well, the story goes that Finger completely tore this version of Batman to shreds, redesigning Batman's costume to what we're more familiar with, coming up with the idea of Gotham, creating many of Batman's most iconic villains such as Joker and the Penguin. However, when Bob Kane sold Batman over to DC, his father convinced him not to sign Bill Finger's name in order to be the sole creator. Kane, years later, completely dismissed Finger's stake to the Batman character. Finger died in 1974, alone, without recognition for creating the Batman character, but since it's come out that he did have something to do with it, and as recently as 2015, his name has been put on the creation of Batman. But it just was a one of those things back in the 1900s where people were just stealing ideas from each other. Batman Forever was a critically panned 1995 Batman movie directed by the late Joel Schumacher, starring Val Kilmer as Batman and famously Jim Carrey as the Riddler. The movie came out over 2 decades ago and was basically rejected by critics and audiences alike. Many people think that the movie was too tonally confused and lighthearted. However, it's recently come into light that Joel Schumacher actually initially created a director's cut that never made it into the final product. A director's cut that was much darker and grittier, and as of February 2021, it still hasn't been released. We don't know if it ever will be, but my point is, if Zack Snyder gets a chance at redemption, why shouldn't Joel Schumacher? Why do people still continue to live in Gotham? It's a very valid question. I think this entry is just simply asking the question. Well, there could be a number of reasons. One is that they can't move out, because who wants to buy a house in Gotham? This person on Reddit says, why do people continue to live in sub-Saharan Africa, North Korea, or Barnsley? Which are very different places, but I digress. In reality, from a writer's perspective, and this is a critique of Batman, it's simply that if no one lived in Gotham, there would be no stakes. No people means that nobody for the hero to save, less dramatic tension. So that's it from a writer's perspective. It's just that Batman needs people to save. A superhero needs stakes. Because if Batman can save the people, he can put off saving himself. Okay, now we're really getting into the darker entry, so please click away if you aren't comfortable with the subject matter. Joker raped Batgirl. Now, this is also featured in The Killing Joke. In the original comic, we see that as a way of torturing Jim Gordon, the Joker clearly takes pictures of a naked Batgirl after paralysing her and showing them to Gordon. Clearly a disgusting act. Many feminists have said that using this as a way to advance the plot wasn't the correct thing to do. In the movie adaptation, however, the door is left open as to what the Joker did. Something he raped Batgirl. But yeah, it's another thing that's left open. We don't know the full extent of the attack. Okay, this one contains spoilers for the 2019 Todd Phillips Joker movie. So again, you've been warned. So when you're reading or watching any Batman novel or movie, you need to take into account whatever backstory Joker gives with a grain of salt. The Long Halloween, or perhaps The Dark Knight, are best examples of this. He gives different stories, you can't really tell his backstory. Well, in Joker, Arthur Fleck's mother, Penny, tells Arthur, aka Joker, that he is Thomas Wayne's son, making him brothers with Bruce Wayne. Now, his mum isn't exactly the most reliable source, and this movie is directly modelled after Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy, which personally makes me more likely to believe that either she's lying or she's just confused. However, there will always be that grain of doubt. You know, it's always possible that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is brothers with Bruce Wayne. So this is a popular fan theory that Joker is a metahuman with the power to change his kind of power level based on probability. Like, his power is subconscious and it only works when the odds are way out of his favour. I mean, think about it, right? The Joker behind all the paint is just a dude. He's meant to be a supervillain, but he's really just a man behind a coat of paint and a suit. He can go toe-to-toe with Batman. He outsmarts him at every turn. However, the problem is that when it comes to the small things, Joker usually trips up. He'll lose a key, he'll trip over something. And therefore the theory is that while the Joker can achieve the unachievable, like beating Batman, he can't overcome the unlikely. To me, if you want to excuse the fact that Joker can't feel any pain anymore and therefore is immune to Batman's punches and that, this isn't too far of a stretch. But I don't know. Batman Fights Dracula is a 1967 Filipino film directed by Leo D. M. Diaz and written by Bert R. Mendoza. The film was not authorized by DC Comics and therefore is lost. There is some found footage, but it's generally quite hard to find, and therefore this is quite hard to research. Either way, I believe that these days Dracula is public domain. It might have been back then, I'm not too sure. So if DC hypothetically, for some reason, ever wanted to create a Batman vs. Dracula sequel, they could. Like, hypothetically, they could. Okay, Alfred is Bruce's real father. I found some random fan theories floating around on the internet, and a few of them are saying that based on their level of emotional connectivity, that Alfred is essentially Bruce's father, and it really depends on what you want to define as real. But if you're speaking in terms of biological, the only theory I could find is that Thomas Wayne spent so much time at work, Martha cheated on him with Alfred. Alfred just never told Bruce because he didn't want to ruin the image that Bruce had of his mother. Again, based on the bond that Alfred and Bruce have, it's close even for a father-son relationship, let alone even a person and their butler, so it's perhaps a stretch, but definitely not out of the realms of possibility. Alfred being behind the murder of Bruce's parents. Okay, yeah, so I found this one on Quora, but it does seem to be legitimate. Unfortunately, this story doesn't take place in the Batman universe, but instead an alternate universe where Bruce Wayne grows up to be none other than Owlman. He's supervillain, and this story kind of ties into Joker's theory of the duality of good and evil being held at a knife edge and being able to flip on a dime. There's also another fan theory in which the murder of Wayne's was conducted by Alfred in an attempt to raise the position of his power to be the legal guardian of Bruce Wayne. But this theory doesn't have too much backing, as Alfred was good friends with Thomas, I think, and it just isn't really his character. But yeah, those are the two kind of things I found. This one might be my favourite theory of them all, and that's Bruce Wayne's life is a hoax. We all know that he left Gotham for years before the events of Batman Begins and Batman Year One. Well, when he returned, he didn't want to run his father's company, he was instead intent on fighting crime. Well, this theory states that Alfred and Wayne Corp were nearing bankruptcy, and as a last-ditch effort decided to use their vast amounts of money to hire actors to play villains for Batman to fight. Therefore, Bruce Wayne comes back to run Wayne Corp under the secret identity of Bruce Wayne. He gets to fight villains as Batman, and he never loses despite the insurmountable odds. This is also why Gotham never executes any of their inmates, because they're not actually criminals. This explains why they keep on coming back, because they're not actually arrested. So yeah, it's a very interesting theory. This one is basically that Bruce Wayne is actually in Arkham Asylum. Let's be honest, the story of Batman, despite there being relatively no superpowers, is batshit crazy, no pun intended. The dude is jumping from skyscrapers, beating up clowns, scarecrows, professional puzzlers in a bat costume with a belt that can summon basically anything, even trusty bat shark repellent. The theory is that after Bruce's parents were murdered, Bruce had a mental breakdown and he was thrown into Arkham Asylum, with his villains being interpretations of fellow prisoners and guards. The fact that Batman doesn't have superpowers probably makes this more likely. I don't know if I believe it, but it's just a very interesting theory. Okay, what the is with Batman fighting Dracula? I didn't know this was such a beloved matchup. This one's very similar to Batman vs. Dracula. It's Andy Warhol's Batman movie, titled Batman Dracula. Again, made without DC's consent. This one made in 1964. Actor Jack Smith played Batman, and Dracula as well, for some reason. I guess it's some sort of weird superhero Austin Powers. The film has been lost for a long time, but some scenes were shown in a documentary about actor Jack Smith titled Jack Smith and the Destruction of Atlantis. So yeah, I'll probably play a bit of stuff here, and yeah, it's just cool. It's just cool. And finally, Gotham is real? Well, obviously not. Obviously it takes place in New York, but why not call it New York? Well, the idea was made by the previously mentioned Bill Finger. While New York would be a fine name, naming it Gotham means that you could be from Paris, London, Berlin, Beijing, it doesn't matter. Gotham is more of an idea. The concept is universal. The only real Gotham is Gotham Jewelers, the place in the phone book that Bill Finger found and immediately decided to call his location Gotham City. So that's how we got inspiration for the name. Gotham is an idea. Gotham as a concept is not an actual place. So there we have it, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please subscribe, and if you have any Iceberg submissions, please send them to me at foxakimbo@gmail.com, or message them to me at FoxAkimbo on Twitter. If I made any mistakes, please let me know down in the comments, and apart from that, I want to sincerely thank everyone for their continued support, and let me know what you want to see me do next, because I'm only 17 videos in, and I'm already out of ideas. Thank you for watching.